The locals always said the Blue Ridge Mountains kept their own secrets, some buried under moss-coated stones, others whispered through the trees when the wind curled down the ridgelines. I never believed any of it until the autumn I traveled there alone to record real Appalachian encounters for a documentary project. My name is Lena Hart, 28, freelance journalist and naively someone who thought no story was too dark to chase. The mountains proved me wrong long before the first frost settled on the leaves. I arrived in a tiny community called Raven's Hollow, a name that sounded more like something from folklore than a place you could point to on a map. The road twisted upward like something alive, and the air grew cooler with every mile until it felt like I had climbed into another world entirely. Wooden shacks, rusted mailboxes, yards littered with faded wind chimes. It was a place that didn't feel abandoned, yet didn't feel fully inhabited either. The locals stared as I passed, eyes heavy with warning rather than curiosity. My rental cabin sat on a ridge, where the forest pressed directly against the porch. The host, an older man named Calhoun, handed me the keys with fingers trembling like he had something to confess, but didn't dare. "You're here for stories," he whispered without meeting my eyes. "Just remember, miss, not every story wants to be found." I laughed politely, but the way the trees shifted behind him, despite the still air, made something cold settle under my ribs. The first encounter came sooner than expected. That night, while I unpacked in the lamplit cabin, a slow dragging sound echoed outside across the porch boards. Something heavy, deliberate. I froze. The nearest house was almost a mile down the gravel road, and I hadn't heard an engine or footsteps. The dragging sound stopped directly outside the window. I forced myself to peek through the slatted blinds. Nothing. Only darkness and the faint outline of trees. But then, through the black, a pale face appeared, not pressed to the glass, but suspended in the dark a few feet away. Eyes cloudy, mouth slack, skin stretched thin like wet paper. The figure hovered unnaturally, and before I could move, the lips curled upward into a smile far too wide to be human. I stumbled back, knocking over a suitcase. The face vanished. For hours I sat at the small kitchen table with every light on, staring at the door, listening for anything. The forest outside remained unnervingly silent. Not even crickets. The next morning, when I finally stepped outside, there were tracks, thin streaks in the dirt like something had been dragged along the ground. But the drag marks didn't approach the cabin. They started at the porch and led back into the trees, carving 2 long trenches into the soil. I should have left then. Maybe I would have if I hadn't already scheduled interviews with locals who claimed to have witnessed true Appalachian encounters in the Blue Ridge. I convinced myself exhaustion played tricks on me. The first interview was with a middle-aged woman named Henley, whose smile stretched tight, as if the muscles of her face had forgotten how to relax. Her house stood on a narrow ridge where the forest tilted downward steeply, the tall pines forming a cathedral of shadow around us. "You came looking for truth?" she asked as she poured tea with shaking hands. "The truth here isn't what you want." I asked her what she'd seen. Her eyes settled on the window, watching the tree line like something waited there. "They come at night," she whispered. "Not spirits, not animals, things in between. Things that used to be like us, before the mountains took them back." She told me about the hollow ones, figures that appeared as pale, drifting faces, always smiling, always watching. "They didn't walk," she said. "They glided. And when they found someone alone for too long, they tried to pull them into the dark so the mountains could remake them. It starts with seeing their faces," she said. "Then hearing their voices. Then feeling them breathe behind you." Her words made my skin crawl because I had already seen the first part. As I left her house, she gripped my arm. "If you hear your name in the forest, don't answer," she warned. "It won't be who you think." That night, rain hammered the cabin roof. I sat writing notes when I heard it. A woman's voice, faint, drifting through the downpour. "Lena, come out. Please." It sounded like my mother. I froze, tears stinging my eyes. She had died 3 years ago. The voice came again, closer this time. "Lena, open the door." The doorknob began to twist. I backed away, shaking, clutching my phone like it could protect me. "Go away," I whispered, though my words were drowned by rain. The knob stopped turning. Silence followed, long, heavy silence. When I finally peered outside, The only thing greeting me was darkness thick as ink. The forest felt alive. The encounters escalated quickly. On the third night, I woke to the sound of knocking, slow, steady, as if a single knuckle struck the wood at exact intervals. Knock, knock, knock. When I crept to the living room, the knocking moved to the back door. Then the side window. Then the walls, tapping from different directions, as if multiple hollow hands circled the cabin. I dropped to the floor, heart pounding so loudly it drowned out the taps. My breath came in shallow bursts. I closed my eyes. A whisper slid beside my ear. "We found you." The next morning I drove straight to see Calhoun, desperate for answers. His home sat along a broken fence line, chickens scattering under the porch when I slammed my car door. "You've seen them, haven't you?" he asked before I said a word. His eyes glistened with dread. "Why didn't you warn me properly?" I snapped. He swallowed. "Because warning don't save nobody. They come for anyone who listens too closely. And you came to collect stories. That's as close as listening gets." He told me the Hollow Ones were once mountain folk who wandered too far into the ridges during the darkest nights, swallowed by something locals called the Blue Deep, a space between shadows where the mountains folded into themselves. Anyone who looked into that space or heard its voices was changed, bit by bit, until nothing remained but a drifting remnant of their face. "They don't want to hurt you," he said. "They want to take you home." "That's worse," I whispered. But it was too late. The encounters followed me even during daylight. While recording ambient forest sounds, I heard footsteps circling me, though I saw no one. Shadows flickered even when the sun shone bright. Once, I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in a stream, but there was another face behind mine, pale and smiling. The final night in Raven's Hollow was the worst. I was packing to leave at dawn when the lights flickered. The air grew ice cold. Outside, the wind roared down the ridge so violently the cabin walls shuddered.